All righty. Well, we've got a fun topic today. Um, so in here at Grow Global, we like to help the agents in different ways and to communicate with them. Today's going to be kind of interactive, so I want you guys to kind of join in and participate and talk. And we're going to go over things in real estate. But today we're going to talk about gut punches in real estate, right? Things that can take you out in real estate. And I've been in for 30 years now, and I've seen all types of things happen in the real estate world. There's Donnie Morrow. Hi, Donnie. How's it going?
Yeah.
Good. Let's see, I'm not muted. I'm good. How are
Yeah,
you?
there you go.
Hey,
Donnie's back from vacation, so he's nice and rested.
Yeah, I'm going again in 9 days.
That's just terrible. What an awful life.
Right.
But yeah, gut punches in the real estate industry. What happens when that happens to you, and what can you do about it, or what are ways that you can mitigate those and snap out of it? So, and I know many of us who've been in the real estate industry for a while have had those. Being a broker owner, I've had to coach my agents through it quite a bit because. Uh, a lot of times, if agents are growing their business, whenever they run into a roadblock, sometimes I can kind of take the wind out of their sails and kind of get them to rethink. We've had a number of agents in the real estate industry, and I've heard story after story of agents in the real estate industry that will run into a brick wall and quit the industry just because they don't know how to handle it. So the good thing is having people around you that can walk you through that or say, hey, look, that's going to happen. Let's go to the next, right? But when I'm talking about gut punches, what am I talking about? Well, some things could be like a deal died. You put a deal together, you put all that information in, you negotiating with people, and you get close to the closing, or you get to the inspection or appraisal, something happens, and boom, it's dead, right? And so some agents don't know how to handle that. Or if it does happen, what can you do? How about you're talking to a client and you're having great conversations and you're progressing along, and all of a sudden they ghost you, they completely disappear. Expired listings, those can be tough unless you're doing it in volume. One thing that really helps through this process of having things hit you is if you're constantly working and going through the motions, and you're constantly adding people to your database, you're constantly having conversations, you have deals flowing. When you run into problems, they're not as bad of a deal because it's next, right? You just go on to the next one, right? But if it's the only one you're working on, it can be kind of tough to handle. But expired listings, sometimes they can really hit you hard. But some people are experienced with it. They go on. Like Donnie said in his career, how many expired listings have you had in your career, Donnie?
Quite a few.
That's all of us. If you've been in the business a long time and you've done a lot of listings, you're going to have them. That's just the way it goes. But the trick is, what do you do next, right? How do you push through that? Um, how about your pipeline? You're starting to get some progress, and all of a sudden, all the deals you had working dry up. So there's a lot of things. Financial stress. Some agents get in the real estate industry on a shoestring, and then they're stressed out because of financing. So when that deal falls through, it can really hurt. So there's a lot of things that can happen in the real estate industry, and so does anybody have any examples of things that could be a stonewall or a roadblock, or things that have happened to them in the real estate industry that kind of said, wow, that was tough? Does anybody have any examples they can throw out there?
I think one of the big ones we have, and we do it to ourselves, is we don't have a good SOI system, and then our SOI goes and does business with somebody else, and we blame it on them instead of
Oh,
ourselves.
oh, that's a big one right there.
man,
If
that's
your sphere of influence, your friends, family, sometimes they'll just, hey, hired somebody else to help sell their house, or somebody else to help buy their house, and say, hey, I'll refer you some business, but they use somebody else. That's that's a tough one. Tony.
Yeah, and again, from my experience, the one thing that always seems to hit hardest is when a client doesn't listen and they use inferior people to help, whether it's a mortgage broker or an attorney that isn't versed in real estate, and it just makes the transaction so much more difficult. And sometimes they even lose out on things. And it's, at that point where I'm like, all right, let's try to get the train back on the tracks, because the adversity of dealing with people who are not in real estate, trying to do real estate things, is just awful.
Oh, it's like don't you love the word rocket mortgage? When
Oh,
Uh,
when
my.
your buyer comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm pre-approved. I'm ready to go. I went online and got approved with Rocket Mortgage." Most agents are going to go, "Oh no," because they
oh,
know what's about to happen next. And then
no,
so
oh,
the next thing is you have a lot of times we'll see it where you go through a mortgage loan officer and they can't get the deal done. It has a roadblock or something happens and that mortgage company can't complete it. As an agent, you need to start pounding the pavement and find out who can do it, what mortgage company can do it. You can switch gears to someone who's his specialty in that area. I've seen quite a few deals saved because this mortgage company over here can't do that type of deal, but then they go somewhere else who has a different type of mortgage criteria that they underwrite with, and they can get it done. So Donnie, do you have those happen in your business?
Oh yeah.
So how do you work around those?
So the you've got to know local lenders that can do stuff, obviously, and you want to know a broker that has a lot of products. Like I know if you know a Nexa LO in your area, Nexa can go through UWM and a lot of other companies, but they have like 300 different products, right? So sometimes there's a deal where maybe your local bank can't do it or Rocket or whatever the case meant can't be, and you want to have that go-to LO, like, oh, this guy here, we may not do business every day, but he's with Nexa and he has 300 products. If anybody can get this one done, it's him.
Wow.
Yeah, just problem solving. We get, as real estate agents, we get paid to solve problems because I almost every deal now is has issues. It's just they're gonna happen. You're gonna have them. So your job is to solve those problems, whether it's with the negotiations, whether it's with the personalities in the buyer, seller, or agents, whether it's with the property itself, whether it's with the inspection, whether it's with the appraisal, mortgage, title issues. I mean, Kim and I ran into a title issue. We were refinancing our mortgage, and the title company said, "Hey, we've got a problem. When you purchased your home, there something came up and the previous title company did not clear it, so we can't proceed, we can't close on your refinance." And then they said, "By chance, did you get owner's title insurance?" And we said, "Yeah, we got owner's title insurance." They said, "Oh my gosh, good, send me the policy." So I dug out the policy, we sent it over to the title company, and they said, "No problem, we can close now. Since you had that policy, we're covered." So I mean, we even had to solve our own problem. It sounded like the title company was going to shut us down. You can't do it. You can't close. But we had to
Right.
solve our own problem, right? So when you're dealing in real estate, you get paid by the ability to solve problems. That's what I found.
Dan, you can unmute
Yeah,
Dan.
yeah. Hey, so yeah, you can have a backup lender in your back pocket to pivot have to, but it's also important to know how to navigate that. Because I had a scenario last year where the lender, the client came to me with the lender they already had, and we're like a week from closing, and they get turned down.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so I immediately pivot to another lender I know, explain the situation, and they said, we think we can close. But the listing agent was a newer agent, was none the wiser, thank goodness. And so I didn't say we had any issues at all because it was a multi-offer situation last spring. And so I said, hey, listen, we're just going to need a couple extra days to extend the closing date. Didn't say a word. I got that. I knew we weren't going to be able to close in that time frame, but I knew that once that time frame extended, we could automatically extend another 8 days. So
Mhm.
we did that, closed on time, and the listing agent never knew there was any issues in the background. But you have to think out the box.
But so you're representing your buyer and what's best interest in your buyer, right?
Yeah.
So getting that deal done. I love that.
The other
Yeah,
thing I see
go ahead.
that agents, learn to communicate, like communication is very key because if you think about it, we are like, think about, we are the brain surgeons, we are about to operating on a brain. So what I'm saying is you go in there, your mindset got to be right. And then you got to know that I'm going to prepare for any challenges about to come. So what happened, I saw many times agent think like, oh, I'm just gonna show open a few door, put, an offer together, accept it, and we go closing and we make money. Yeah, that is the big picture. But on the detail of getting the client and communicating the counter offer, I mean, so you have to learn to be able to communicate with the listing agent. If you were the buyer agent, or if you're a listing agent, you have to learn to communicate to the buyer agent just like Dan did. Dan was like, look, like I'm going to do everything on this deal. And because some agent, whatever it is, you have to be the expert no matter what side. If I'm listing, I be the expert on both sides. If I'm the buyer agent, I'm still the expert on both sides. Does it make sense? So it's not like, oh, gonna let the listing agent do their job. Yeah, well, they do their job, but the whole big picture of your deal better when the anticipate a challenge and look at the title, look at everything. Like if there's a loan problem, go to the next one. Don't go like, oh, this person didn't get approved, and you stop there. You got to learn to pivot back to back. That's like a brain surgeon. You kind of look at the whole thing, and you are it. You are that person for that deal. And if your mindset is not right and communication is not clear with both sides, your buyer or your seller or listing agent, whatever it is, the whole group, then that's what you gotta prepare. How do I do a great job at this? What is the outcome I have? Like I'm dealing with an agent in Columbus, Georgia, right here. And she was just like trying to go, just try to nitpicking on things. And I'm like, listen, what is your outcome? Is your outcome to get your seller to get your move, get your home sold, or is your outcome? What is your outcome? Because she's like, she's dancing all over because I asked her 5 items for repairs, and she was like this and that. I'm like, okay, 5 items and your seller will be able to move out like within a week. We talk about 5 little items. And she's like, well, I'm like, no, go talk to your seller, take care of these 5 items for this, out of town buyer because they haven't even seen the house at all. So 5 items, and got to learn to communicate to that agent. But she fought me and fought me, and then I fought for my client, and we got it done. But the agent was like trying to almost kill the deal with just like 5 little things to repair for a out of town client moving in because they're not even in town. They just haven't even seen it. I was there, and so these are the things that you got to be able to hold it together when you are representing. It doesn't matter who you represent, you have to hold it together and look at the outcome of your client. That's key.
I see that a lot in real estate these days, with especially with new agents coming on. A lot of times, the new agents want to try to control things, but they're not working in the best interest of their clients. They're causing problems, and so experienced agents, they can work through problems. So a lot of times, I'll see that the most senior agent in the deal will carry the deal. They'll say, look, I'm just going to do whatever it takes for my client regardless of what's going on. I see that a lot. Now, it's okay to be a newer agent, but if you're not sure about something, ask somebody, get some help, or have them come. Hey, what would you do about this? I get calls all the time from agents that say, hey, I've got this situation, what would you do? And I would give them scenarios on how to handle it. because I want to help them get through the deal. That's our job as real estate agents, is to work in the best interest of our client, but the ultimate best interest is to get the deal closed, right? So even if the other agents fighting us on it are not doing what they're supposed to do. I've heard some agents go, hey, well, the other agent's not helping, so we're just going to find another house. Okay, you can do that. But if your buyer wants it or your seller wants to sell it, then figure it out. I know back in the mortgage business, Kim was a bulldog back in the mortgage days. And so she would fight for her clients. And sometimes the lender would say, hey, we can't do that, or we're denied. And Kim will go, why? What is the problem? Where do we need to work on? Oh, this is happening. Well, what can we do here? What if we do that? How can we fix that? So if you start digging a little bit into problems, sometimes you can find a better solution. A lot of times, the person is telling you, we can't do it, or my client doesn't like that, or we're denying you. That maybe there's a way around it if you just know what the hiccup is, right? Because there's many times in the mortgage industry that we've dug a little bit and found out, hey, if you just pay this off, or if you just get rid of that, or if you sell that car, you can get qualified. And the loan officer didn't mention it at all. We found out what the problem was, and we solved the problem to get it closed. So as a real estate agent, that's your job, is to represent your client and to work through those type of problems.
I
So
guess the
Tony, I saw
other,
you unmuted.
Yes, I was just gonna say I totally agree. It's kind of funny when, I think back on some of the issues with stories and things. Like,
Yeah.
uh, I had one where an agent w and her attorney, or the seller's attorney, both just almost killed the deal. Actually, they killed it. My buyer ended up walking, and I waited for the weekend for everyone to have cooler heads to prevail. Talked to my client. He was like, "Well, let them come back to us." And I'm like, "That's not how olive branches work. Let's try to get this back on track." I called the agent, and she's like, "Your client's still interested in buying?" I said, "We didn't come to the closing table just to walk away." I said, we were blindsided by this HOA, violations. So now that your client has to fix them, they've got two choices. A, they can get everything repaired. Once we know the HOA is good with it, we'll sign off and close. Or B, they can put it back on the market and either A, have to fix these issues or disclose these issues. What option would they prefer? We'll fix them, and but you got to close by Thursday. And I'm like,
I think we lost Tony there for a
mortgage
second.
broker,
Oh, there you
the
are.
attorney, and
Yeah.
the attorney's like, "Oh, sorry."
That's
So I basically had to call everyone, the mortgage broker, the attorney, to get it back on track. And the attorney's like, "Well, if they can get everything done by Wednesday, we can close Thursday. But if I don't have that by end of day, we're not setting up a closing until I have that the day prior." And I'm like, "Perfect with me. You can be the bad guy on this." End up getting it closed. And when we went back into closing,
I think we
that
lost him
agent
again for a
came
second.
in
There he is.
and, oh, sorry. Basically, the agent was so bad, she thought that she was the reason for the deal going through, and was trashing me being with a boutique agency, not knowing how to do real estate. My attorney and buyer both look at each other, at me. I shrug. They look back at each other. And then my buyer goes, "She's out of here. Otherwise, I won't close on this house." And she got thrown out of her own closing, but we got it closed and done because everything I did. And I was like, let's let cooler heads prevail. Because I even tried talking about it, throwing her out of there, because I was like, this is insane.
Right? Well, that brings up a good topic, is problems at the closing table. Who has a story of a problem that happened at the closing table? I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I got a doozy.
Oh, nice. I'd love to hear
This
I
was
got another one
probably
too.
3 years ago,
it. Yeah.
the day of the closing. And I'm representing the seller. Now, I was their third agent. That was a big red flag right there for a third listing agent. And so
Yeah.
anyway, so they did not show up at closing. They weren't there. We're calling, texting, everyone's calling, texting, no response. And then finally, you know, you know, my client said some weird excuse, and I said, you're going to be in default, and so you need to show up to closing. So finally, shows up to closing about 30 minutes later, and literally starts screaming at the buyer's agent. Not me, but the buyer's agent, because they had about $6,000 in past HOA dues that were unpaid. And the closing attorney was going to make them pay him. And my client said, no, I paid it, and just was just screaming. And so finally, I am thinking, okay, this is not going to happen. So finally, I went to another room with the real estate attorney. I said, listen, I said, how about we do this? We go ahead and we escrow that $6,000. She doesn't get it. We give her 5 business days to show you written evidence that's been paid. If it's not been paid, then you release the rest of those. You don't release those funds. And if it has been paid, then hey, everything's fine. You go ahead and release the funds to the seller. And so my seller agreed to that. Thank goodness. And so 5 days later, I reached out to the closing attorney and I said, let me guess, they never showed you any evidence that they paid HOA dues. And they said, nope, they never paid them.
Yeah. That's right.
And I had to actually sell the house without allowing the buyers to go in the house, because the day that we started doing showings, my client intentionally locked the door because did not want anyone going in the house.
Oh,
I had to
geez.
sell the house without them going inside.
Wow.
Oh,
That was a
boy.
doozy.
Crazy, crazy. Tony, you said you had another one?
Oh yeah, this was with a title company. Um, I was actually not even a real estate agent at the time. I was selling a property, one of my investment properties, and the buyers sent in like their insurance paperwork the night before. Their insurance agency did it, and had like today's date of March 2nd, effective coverage for March 3rd, which was the date we were closing. Well, the title company had problems with that, and the closing went for 6 hours, or 6.5 hours.
Wow.
The buyer's attorney left because they were like, I can't stay here. I have other closings. And there was no other, realtors or attorneys in the room. It was just buyer and seller with the title company there. And I actually had to walk them through what some of the paperwork was because they had no clue what they were even doing in there. And I felt horrible, but I wasn't going to obviously lie to them. I was just like, oh, and it was the document where, hey, this is how much you're going to be spending for your mortgage, and this is the day that your mortgage starts, that your first payments due. These buyers loved me, and still to this day, they stalk me out on Facebook and are my friends there, which is hilarious to me.
That's
Solving
awesome.
problems. That's the way it goes. Hey, Donnie, have you had a nightmare closing?
Yeah, we've certainly had them from people trying to put them into a trust to avoid paying liens that get found right before
Oh,
closing, to the deals falling through, or just honestly, I think half the time the bigger issue is the other agents, kind of like what Kim was saying earlier. We make it so hard on ourselves. So many agents are the anti-sales team
uh-huh.
and just don't remember we cooperate. We are in the habit and we teach our team to remind the other agent we're on the same team, right? Like it's like
Exactly.
kind of like what Tim was saying, like what's the outcome? Like, hey, we're
Yeah.
on the same team here. You want to get paid, I want to help you get paid. My buyer wants the house, your seller wants to sell. Let's all
Yeah.
play nice together and figure this out. Like so often it's the other agent.
Oh yeah, by far. And a lot of times it's their ego because they told their client something and they're staying hard line on it and they're not budging on it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
I had
one
a
one
quick
of the
story.
go
I
ahead.
I sold one for one of my repeat investors, and his workers were still finishing up our house, or they happened to be there doing something to a house that had been renovated when the agent showed the house, and the buyer said something about the stove looking old, and she said, "Oh, I'll get them to get you a new stove." Well, the workers heard it and told him that she said that. He was like, I will do anything but buy them a new stove just because she shouldn't open her mouth and volunteered me to. And we got it sold to him about him buying a stove, but just little
Oh,
stuff like
jeez.
that to where, agents open their mouths in front of the wrong people and it's completely innocent overall, but they're setting an expectation that can't be met. So I think
Exactly.
that's what we
That's
need to
right.
talk about. Like on this topic of what causes realtors to quit or whatever the case might be. I literally just had this happen. I've got a realtor. Well, she was a realtor, and she is not a wimp. She just got out of the army, so she's 22 years old. Sorry, I think I don't know if y'all can hear that or not. Somebody's calling me back to my follow-up boss number, so it's ringing. Okay, y'all may not be able to.
Yeah.
But she's 22 years old. She just got out of the army. She's not a wimp. She did her first deal, and the agent was so mean to her that I think it played into this. She quit real estate. She was just like, I'm quitting. Like she said, because her husband wanted her to be home with the baby more or whatever. But I'm like, it's real estate. You have some flexibility. I think a lot of it had to do with the agent. And what it really comes down to, not just that, but a lot of these things is our expectations. You kind of hit on it
Hmm.
earlier, but I think it helps people to know that expectations destroy things in our lives. We expect the president to do this and he does that, right? And we're frustrated. We expect our spouse to do this and they do that. We expect the weather to do this and the weather does that. I do jujitsu. We expect to get our black belt and we don't. People will do 10 years of jujitsu and then quit before they get their black belt because they thought they were due for it and their instructor thought they weren't. I'm like, it's
Right.
been 10 years. You can wait another 3 months. Calm down. Right. So,
Exactly, right?
so a lot of things in our life come from our expectations. And a lot of our frustrations in business come from our expectations as well. We expect our SOI to use us, whether we reach out to them
Hmm.
or not. And when they don't, we get frustrated. We expect lenders to do their job, and quite often they're not going to. We expect buyers and sellers to be honest, and quite often we expect the other agent to be reasonable to work with, right? So I've listed off like 20 expectations. There's probably another 100 of them. But I think the most important message for everybody here is I don't want to say don't have expectations, but maybe just don't be in love with the result. Don't be in love with the outcome. Just try to embrace the process, I think is the best way to put it. Like if you do the
Sure.
process, and just let everything fall out of the bottom. Like I tell people all the time, when I listed 100 houses a year, how did I do that? I kept up with 800 people. I had 800 people with reminders on it I kept up with. At any given time, I had 15 to 20 or 25 of them that were listing with me, whether they were getting their house ready, whether they were waiting for a month for their kid to get out of school, whatever the situation was, but they were on my list. They were listing with me. I would list 10 of them this month. And guess what? My only job was to replace those 10 with another 10 to keep my list at 25. That was it. I didn't care who
Exactly.
it was. I didn't care which one actually bought. I didn't expect anybody to actually buy. I didn't expect anybody to actually sell. I simply embraced the process of staying in touch with as many people as I possibly could and let the results fall out of the bottom. And it removes so much frustration because you don't have that expectation of, oh, I got three clients and they both of them to buy this month. And now
Right.
you're disappointed when they don't. You want to quit the business. You're frustrated. Just stack that funnel to the point that it doesn't matter what other people do. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody.
Oh, managing expectations is critical. And like you said, I've seen so many agents after their first deal, they're so disgusted with the process that they just quit the industry. It's crazy. But the ones that can manage expectations and be problem solvers are the ones that succeed long term. They survive and they last.
Yeah.
When I used to be a broker owner in Remax, I had 400 agents we were managing. You know what the number one issue we had to deal with constantly with deals is possession at closing.
Because
Because
you were in Tennessee and
somebody
it stinks.
Oh, somebody would say, "Hey, I'm not leaving my house. I'm not packing up and moving until I get paid," right? And then
Yep.
the buyer's going, "Wait a minute, I'm closing the house. It's my house. I want it when I buy it." And it's just that was the number one thing we had to work out all the time. And I had to coach agents on this, how to work through that, how to do, possession after closings, how to do all these different gyrations to make people comfortable and have them understand, hey, let's just get this deal closed. Let's figure out one way or the other how we can meet in the middle and make it work.
Yeah, that can be a sticky one. We've definitely run into that because you're right. In Tennessee, somebody's at risk.
Yeah,
Either the seller's at risk because they move out earlier, and then if the buyer gets in a car wreck and doesn't close, the seller spent all this money and now they're sitting there with an
right.
empty house. Or the buyer's at risk because he closes and the seller's still in his house, and he's now dependent on the seller to move out. So, or at least the seller's in there at final walkthrough. So yeah, I
Right.
don't I don't like the Tennessee. I don't know how other states do it, but I don't like the Tennessee process. Luckily, we don't run into it too often, but we do. We have had issues with that. Yes.
Yeah, that was one of the top things I had to help agents through was possession at closing. It was crazy, crazy stuff.
We had a major nightmare because I think a house was supposed to be empty at walkthrough on the contract. The seller did not make it empty. So the buyer said, I'm not closing. They delayed closing for a day. Guess what happened by the time they went back over the next day? Someone had broken into the house and stolen all the appliances. So who
Oh,
owned the house at the time of the break-in? Nobody knows because we don't know if it was before or after the swap, blah, blah, blah. So it was a major ordeal.
oh, geez,
Mm.
crazy stuff. I know.
That
I know.
happened to
Kim had
me.
a listing that. Go ahead.
I said that
Go
happened
ahead,
to
Kim.
me. We did a final, so we literally, I'm the listing agent, right? And then the buyer bought the home, and I told him, hey, let make sure you do a walkthrough. I mean, I'm a listing agent, but I even nicely told him, hey, make sure you go by and take a look at the house and make sure everything is okay. Because the buyer's out of town. I told him exactly what to do. I'm like, hey, we're closing at 9 o'clock. I mean, not 11 o'clock. Please go by and take a look at the house, make sure everything is okay. You flying in town. He's like, oh, everything is good. The person closed on that listing of mine. Both sellers out of town, buyers out of town, and I'm here. So I told the buyer, I said, come by, take a look at it before you close because I want to make sure everything is good with you. He's like, oh, I'm all good. I'm all good. Long story short to that, we went to closing and he said, hey, you want to pop by the house and see it with me? We went to the listing, all the AC appliances all gone, Donnie. It's like, all gone.
Mhm.
And and the funny thing about that buyer, but the buyer, I told him, I'm like, you know what? This happened before. That's the second set of AC that my seller put in, and that's like that being removed. And he's like, "Oh, I'm preparing for it already." So I'm like, "So that's what you gotta do. You gotta prepare the buyer and the seller, even though it's not even your own buyer, but you gotta tell them ahead of time." And of course, he already knew. He didn't even know, but he's like, "Man, I guess I should have worked out." He asked me, "What would I do if I walked out?" I'm like, "Well, if you haven't closed." My seller still gotta have to buy it. So I talked to the seller a little bit about the situation. So the seller kind of nicely worked it out with the buyer, because both of them were out of town. And so it's a very strange situation. But I was being in the middle, being fair with the buyer and the seller, even though my seller owned nothing. You know what I mean? Like no obligation to do it. But I'm like, hey, you out of town, he's out of town. This is very unexpected. Kind of help him out a little bit. What they did, what she did, it was good.
Well, that was rare that they were amenable and helped each other out because many times people take a hardline stance, don't they?
Well, it's the agent. You talk about the situation, like I mean, is when you work with seller and buyer, it of course it depends on who you represent, but at the end of the day, do what is right. You know what I mean? How would you feel in that situation? Of course, my seller, I told him you don't have to do anything at all. However, just know that you are out of town, he's out of town. We've been kind of make sure that nobody did anything to the property until that day something happened. And she helped out not a whole lot, but she did help out with some. And that's because I was able to talk to her to help out with this, for this buyer. He didn't expect that. He was grateful about it. He's like, wow, I should have come by and take a look. So for your buyers, agent, make sure you gotta go and take a look at it no matter what. Find a walkthrough, and then go take a look at it before you close. And that's the key. Yes, Dan.
Nice. Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so maybe remember an interesting scenario about 6 years ago. Um, I had a buyer, and we went on a contract with a home, did inspection, found out that the copper had been stolen for the AC, and it was vacant. It's been vacant for a while, and so um, I reached out to a listing agent, and come to find out, the listing agent has sold the had listed it before, or no, she was the buyer's agent. It closed about a year prior. So this person is selling it, and the listing agent never ever went back out to the property, used the same old photos, so never knew that the stuff was missing. And apparently, it had been missing for a while. Wow. And the listing agent said, "Well, the seller's not going to replace it." It's like, well, then you're not going to get sold, just
Mhm.
being super difficult. So finally, and they weren't going to do anything. So I had to find two AC firms, have them go over there, get quotes, got the quotes, and then seller still was not going to pay for it. And I said, listen, only way to get the closing table if this gets paid, how about you reduce your commission? I'll do my commission 50-50, cover the AC bill, and we'll get the closing table, and got the closing table. But it was crazy. Seller was not going to budge, and listing agent was not going to budge, and I had to do all the work to even get the estimate.
Yep.
You
Wow.
just shake your head. It's like, why are you? And I always tell my wife, I said, literally 70% of my transactions, I'm doing the other agent's job to get to the closing table. I feel like I should be getting paid on both sides. A transaction.
That's awesome.
Did Rob freeze? I think
Yeah,
Rob
he
might have
probably
froze.
did.
Yeah.
Yep, he
So,
sure did.
and yeah, Dan, you're right. A lot of times it does feel that way. And quite often we're like, Lord, I'm due for an easy one. Please give me an easy one, right? That's just the way it goes. And I think that just comes
Amen.
back to those perceptions. People think, oh, I'm just going to get a license and business is going to fall into
Right.
my hand. I've heard Dana White, president of the UFC, I've heard Tom Ferry, and many other business owners in the last year say, my whole day is filled with problems. I run a business. That's what it is. If I
Hmm.
don't have problems, I don't have business. And I like to keep that perspective because I've got 50 agents and spend a lot of money and an office to run and employees and whatnot, right? And we have however many contracts bound up at one time, which means there's all those other agents as well. And that sometimes helps me keep it in perspective as well. It's like, hey, if I don't have any problems, I'm probably not in business. I'm probably not doing very much. So.
That
Absolutely. That's right.
that's
That's a good way to because if you're having lots of problems, that means you're busy.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's right.
Tony.
Yes, I've got one. It was a doozy, where the agent was very weak and she had a very hard-headed seller and let the seller, basically, oh, I'll do whatever you want, to get the listing from the seller.
and then he froze.
I think we lost Tony.
And
Oh, there
it
you are.
just,
You're back.
yes,
We lost you for a second.
okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a very difficult, weak agent who had a very difficult seller, and it was like I would advise this agent on what to do, and the agent would not do it. Like I told the agent, go there for the home inspection, bring, this packet of paperwork to show why the comps are where they are in order to get the house appraised. She let
Oh, lost Tony again.
the seller go to the house, and the seller's thing, and
Okay.
nearly blew the whole whatchamacallit, appraisal part of it. And it ends up where we get a clear to close and the seller doesn't want to close. She's like, well, I'm not closing on the new house for another 2 weeks. I don't want to close. And we're like, well, you can rent the house back. Oh no, I'm not paying to stay in my own house. And it's like, are you crazy? And I'm like trying to explain to him, like, anything could happen to where, the buyers might not buy. So what happens if they get hit by a truck? And, the agent's like, well, do you really think that they're in peril of dying soon or something? And I'm like, no, that's not the point. And
Yeah.
like the agent just wouldn't listen. And it was one of the most frustrating closings I have ever been a part of. And I was like, God, if this agent ever comes to a house that I have with a buyer, I will not sell the house to her because I'm like, I do not want to work with her.
Yeah,
It was that bad.
back in the my Remax days, I remember there were a couple of agents in Nashville, Tennessee that agents would not work with. Did not. They had a bad reputation of scamming or not doing what they're supposed to do, or had a bad, just horrible reputation. And agents just wouldn't work with them. It's crazy, but everybody knew who they were.
That's the key with Donnie said earlier, expectation is key, and also know your reputation too.
Yep.
It's like be that like expectation, knowing that it will be a problem. Just prepare for it. And like he said, if there's no problems, there's no business, right? And the other thing is truly like Robert just said, I mean, you have to anticipate all this stuff. So if not, they are not anticipation, expectation. I every day I say a prayer. I did everything I can, like Donnie said, don't attach to the result. I don't. I did everything like whatever. I mean, no matter what I do in business, I keep doing what I'm supposed to do and let God, y'all handle the outcome. And that's what we're gonna do. Expect that there will be problem. Expect to handle the problem and just go about the business. If you come in a business, expect no problem and want an easy way out. Real estate is not it for you.
That's right. And so the last thing I have on my list to talk about is client disrespect. So you have clients that have late night texts. They don't respect your boundaries, or their last minute cancellations because your time is valuable. You slotted a time for them and they cancel last minute, usually for stupid reasons. Or let's say you have a seller. You've handled the expectations up front. Hey, we're priced here. We need to be there, but they won't reduce it or they won't adjust it. They just want you to waste your time, even though you've told them up front that hey, you should be doing this. Or maybe a client gets emotionally unstable, or they're up and down in their emotions. So a lot of times we have to deal with that, even with our own clients. We have to handle expectations, handle clients, handle emotions, that kind of thing. Because buying a house or selling a house can be very emotional at times for the parties involved, depending on what's going on. And that's where Donnie says handling expectations comes into play through the whole process. Anybody have an example of a disrespectful client they had to deal with?
Knock
If you
on
get
wood,
one
I
that's
have
long
never had
distance,
one of my own.
What's that? Go ahead, Donnie.
oh yeah, I think Tony said he's never had one of his own. So if you get one that is in a different time zone, so they like to text you at crazy times, just make sure that you respond that when it's a crazy time in their time zone back, and they'll learn.
Yeah.
Um, but I just say,
I
right, like if I'm in the middle
love that.
of a, yeah, if I'm in the middle of a negotiation or working a contract, working repairs out, whatever the case might be, then I'm available anytime. But I'm just at
Hmm.
the point now that if a client just randomly reaches out to me after like 8 o'clock at night, I'm probably just not going to answer till the next day. That's usually the best
Yeah.
way. And as long as you're doing a great job for them, they seldomly will say anything about it, right? Like if they feel like you're always neglectful, they'll fuss about it. But if they feel like,
Right.
hey, anytime before 8 o'clock, he does an amazing job, then they won't bother you. I just took over a listing from one of our agents, and she's been around a while. I think she's just kind of burnt out. She's always been a good agent, but she retired her license. She had one listing, so I took over it. It's one of my leads anyway. And she had had it for a couple months, couldn't get any price reduction or anything. Within a few weeks, I got a price reduction and we got it under contract last night. But even Saturday night when we were texting back and forth, working negotiations or whatever, he's like, man, I really appreciate all your communication. You do a good job. Like when you start getting little things like that from a lot of your clients, you're not looking for it. But if you start getting that, then you know you're on the right track. And when you get to that level of respect or where they know, like, hey, you're doing a good job for you, you don't run into a lot of disrespect. You don't run into the people who won't let you lower their price because they feel like you're working, that kind of stuff. And again, nothing's 100%, right? You may still get that seller
Yep.
that you do everything right and they won't lower the price. That does happen.
Right.
But I find that it doesn't feel like the business is hard to me as it was in the beginning because after selling so many houses and feeling like I really do a good job for people, that they just trust me to the level that it's seldomly do I have the same issues my agents have. And I try to be very compassionate of the
Right.
struggles my newer agents have because they haven't done it as much. So, but you just got to hang in there and do high volume and get better and better at it and be aware of it.
Well,
I think I'm saying that
one
right.
thing that one thing that you said that was key was communication. If you communicate consistently and you communicate specifically, the second highest complaint I used to get from for being a broker owner was I'd get called all the time. My agent won't call me back.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether they did or not, it doesn't matter. The customer perceived that they weren't calling them back enough, right? And it's about customer perception, right? So if you can over communicate, then you can mitigate that. So Donnie's right. Sometimes the issue is just they want to felt heard
Yes, and I
in the
think
process.
it's worse now than it was then. So I've always heard ever since I got into business that the number one complaint NAR gets on agents is lack of communication. Okay. So first of all, it's the number one complaint. And I will tell you, even from my own agents who I think are good agents, when I have bought investment properties from them, I have not felt like they did an amazing job in my communication. Now I try to remember maybe that's just my expectation, right? Like I'm
Right,
expecting them to
right.
be these super agents or something. And it's not that they did bad, but they just didn't necessarily meet my expectation. Go back to that word. But what I've
Right. Right.
noticed throughout my career, when I had listings, I reached out to people once a week. Like if we didn't have showings, so I
Yeah.
wasn't giving them feedback or whatever, once a week they were going to hear from me no matter what. And I got that because when I used to list a lot of expires, they're like, oh, my agent put me on the market and I had to call him 45 days in to see if we were still even active or not. The only time he ever called me was to ask for a price reduction, so I never lowered my price from him. So early on, I put a system in place to where, hey, I'm going to communicate every 7 days with people. What I have found in today's market is oftentimes that is not enough. So the system that I had that 8 years ago, I thought was amazing, top notch. I started getting people reaching out to me after 4 days. And I'm like, this didn't happen in the past. So then I had to adjust that system where I had to reach out every 3 or 4 days versus every seven, not because I changed, but because people's expectations changed. People got more into that, hey, it's a now environment. I want an instant answer, that kind of stuff. So you've got to be smart enough, even if you have a good system, to know, as Rob said, that perception is reality. So while you may have a good system and it may be perfect to you, it may not be perfect to them.
You know what's funny that just reminded me about what you just said is communicating more often. Well, and people said, "Hey, I listed with you because my last agent didn't call me back, and when they did, they wanted me to reduce my price." Right? I used to hear that all the time. My agent only called me when they want to reduce price. Well, if you're consistent with communicating regularly, like Donnie said, well, what if you called the first time you called them after listing the property? It's, hey, here's what's happened. I think we should keep the price right here. Even though you've talked to them about reducing the price, that first call is, I think, in my opinion, we should keep the price right here. The second call, hey, in my opinion, I think we should keep the price right where it is. And in their mind, they're saying, hey, they're really caring about how we, maybe the third time you say, hey, at this point maybe we should reduce the price. So you've planted in their head that you're saying, hey, instead of just saying every time you call we need to reduce the price,
Okay, thank you.
you're saying, hey, we're going to keep it right here, we're going to keep it, oh, now we need to reduce it. You're psychologically telling them, hey, I've got your best interest at heart, and they feel that it's genuine. Tony, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say in agreement with Donnie about that, but also add in you need to almost be a chameleon in how you handle clients. You might have one client that prefers text, another that just wants emails, and a third that wants phone calls. And you have to be adaptable and
Hmm.
be a chameleon in order to help that client achieve their goal of purchasing a house. And it can't all be about you and what you do. And, well, my system's perfect. Well, your system's perfect for you, but it's not perfect for never. No system is perfect for everybody,
Right.
but you have to adapt and do that. And, that was just a great point that Donnie made.
Yes, well, and you're right. I think a good thing to do when you're working with a new client is ask, how do you like to be communicated to? How do you like to communicate back and forth? Do you like emails? Do you like text? Do you like calls? Maybe get an idea of what they prefer, because then they feel heard. Absolutely.
I mean, when they say a certain way to communicate and ask them how often, I mean, like how often, because you cannot put them on a campaign, and knowing Rob, like let's say if me and Rob, we were your clients, right? Don't email us every day. you know, and things like that. So you got to find out that very client,
Yeah,
what is their goal? Hey, would you like us to communicate with you by email or by text or by phone call? And they say, oh, I like phone call. Okay, like how often is that? Is 3 day or 4 day too much, or is it like
yeah,
every other day? Ask them, talk to them, engage them into, so
yeah,
that when you customize the whole listing present, the whole listing period that you
yeah.
communicate that way, so they know, oh, they ask me, they know what I want, because we don't want to get this person, put them in a system and pop out email and automation and things like that. Some clients, like, they don't care, they don't read about that stuff. Like my client, I asked them specifically that, and then they say, hey, yeah, let me know as soon as possible or whatever, but just talk to me regularly, you're doing great. So if you know your intention is to serve your client, uh communication with them and how often it depends on that client, not you.
That's right. I mean, you
Yeah.
can even say, "Hey, I usually call my clients on Tuesday and Friday to
Yeah.
update them. Does that work for you?"
Yeah.
At least give them an expectation, right?
Yeah.
And see if
Sounds
that
good.
works.
And you can,
Awesome. Well, this is a fun topic.
Yeah, man. That
Hey, anybody
punching.
else have any last words before we sign off?
Now, Dan, you got any? You good? Everybody good? Any
Yeah,
question for
it's just like you've been saying, you gotta be if you're not one to problem solve, you're just not gonna make it in this business.
We
right?
Yeah,
get
you just
paid
got
by the
problem solve.
problems we solve. Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
right. And
All right.
expect
Well,
problems gonna happen, and remember your reputation is the other
yep.
key. People will know whether or not you are a pleasure to work with as an agent, by your sellers and by your peers, which is your other agents. So have a great week, guys. Let's go and sell some real estate.
Bye,
See
guys.
you.
Thanks for coming on. We'll
Thanks.
see you next Monday
Thank
at
you,
noon
Dan.
Eastern
Thank you, Tony.
time.
Thank
Have
you,
an awesome
Laura.
week, guys.
Yes,
you
have
do the
awesome week.
same.
See ya.
Stay
Thank you,
warm.
guys.
Bye,
Bye.
Tony. Bye, Dan.
See
See
ya.
Carmen.
you, Carmen,
Good luck.
Laura.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.